Aloha. It is truly one of the greatest honors of my life to be with you today. I'm incredibly proud to be your commencement speaker. Usually commencement speakers are famous people, sometimes they're funny, celebrities, so I'm apologizing in advance that you didn't get Steve Harvey, but instead you got me, an activist. But I am going to try extra hard for that reason to say something that will hopefully be useful to all of you proud graduates. Being with you today reminds me of my own commencement at Columbia University. I can remember it well, sitting outside in the hot sun with my classmates in May of 1996 in New York City, in our light blue robes and uncomfortable hats. We were surrounded on all sides by doting, proud parents, grandparents, and relatives. Some of us stood out a little because we were wearing white armbands. Graduation day, it was a final statement of defiance among us after a year-long campaign for ethnic studies, an ethnic studies department on campus. We had a plan to refuse the handshake of the dean when he handed us the diploma as a sign of protest. I was incredibly nervous. My family was there. I wasn't sure how they would react. You see, we believed that a college situated in a city that was 72% people of color should have a program for students to study the history of those communities and the economic, cultural, and political dynamics that have shaped our communities over time. For someone like me who wanted to take Asian American studies, I only had a couple of options and no permanent faculties to support me. So I was part of a multiracial campaign to address that, and throughout the spring we organized hunger strikes, building takeovers. We took over buildings like our library, our English department called Hamilton Hall. We occupied Hamilton Hall for days, camping out in the building. We even hung a banner over the entrance that said "Liberated Building." Now, I grew up in a family that valued education over everything. And I knew with every action we took, it might result in disciplinary action, which could jeopardize my plans to graduate, and would be the ultimate disappointment to my parents, not to mention wasted hard-earned money that they worked very hard for so that I could graduate from college. But I decided to do what I thought was right anyway. And it did result in some disciplinary action and lots of angry parents, but thankfully everyone graduated. And as a result of our efforts at Columbia, the university eventually established the Center for the Study of Ethnicity and Race. And now as an undergraduate at Columbia, you can minor and major in ethnic studies. Yes. I was 21 during that campaign, and I will tell you that I had no idea what I was doing. And we had no idea what we were doing. But the point is that we tried. We saw an injustice. We had a goal, and we took action. And people followed. And it was never perfect. We didn't always agree, and we made mistakes. But I don't have a single regret about it. Even the mistakes were right, because it was grounded in the need to act. It's important not to miss the times for action, whatever your field is, be it science, technology, or humanities. Trust your gut and take action. Step into the arena. The world needs us to step into those moments. JFK once said, "There are risks and costs to action, but they are far less than the long-range risks of comfortable inaction." So I continued following this path after I graduated and began organizing immigrant women who were working in low-wage jobs, like domestic work. to try to make those jobs better jobs, jobs that you can take pride in and support your family on. Which leads me to the second story I wanted to share with you this morning about a domestic worker named Lily, who was brought to the United States at the age of 15 from Jamaica by a couple who needed a live-in nanny. They were executives at a tech company, and they promised Lily's mother that they would offer her an American education and send a weekly salary home to Jamaica in exchange for her help caring for their children. So Lily lived with the couple in Texas for nearly 15 years and helped to raise their 3 children. But she was never allowed to go to school, and her mother never saw any of those wages. In fact, the couple cut off all communication with her family and the outside world shortly after she arrived. She was essentially enslaved. One day she saw an article in the newspaper about a case like hers that my organization was working on, and she found a way to contact us. We were eventually able to help her escape and find legal representation. In fact, one of the children that she cared for became old enough to know there was something wrong and gave her the money in his piggy bank so that she could escape. When I asked her if she wanted to press criminal charges against the couple, she said adamantly, no. She had thought a lot about it, not because she was afraid or didn't want to go through a long, drawn-out legal process, which would have been completely understandable. She said no because she did not want the children to grow up without their parents. Despite having endured unthinkable isolation and suffering, she loved those children and wanted to make sure they were not harmed in any way. Lily taught me to love more, not less, especially when it's hardest to do so. In the context of the political moment that we're in, the author and activist Van Jones has been saying this quite a bit on television, on CNN. He says, when it's harder to love, love harder. When it's harder to love, love harder. Which leads me to the final point I wanted to make. I'm incredibly excited for you because you have hit a critical benchmark. You have finished your education and you're going out into the world at a very, very important time in our nation's history. I want you to know that you are stepping out into the world at a critical moment in our nation's history. There are times in the story of a nation when history is written faster, when history is written in concentrated form. These are moments of enormous transition and transformation. They have an outsized role in defining us as a nation, defining who we are and who we're becoming. In the 1930s were like this, with the Industrial Revolution, changes in culture and work, creating an upheaval in urban and rural ways of life, and a social movement that helped bring in massive reforms, creating some of the most important pillars of our democracy. These are moments that fundamentally shape and reshape our democracy. This is one of those times. Change is happening on every single front. Technology, work, family, health, demographics, politics. We live in an era of Black Lives Matter and Standing Rock, of Airbnb and artificial intelligence, of the Affordable Care Act, mass deportations, and a Muslim registry, of Barack Obama, of Bernie Sanders, of Donald Trump. Old institutions are falling apart, and new ones are coming into being. And in each and every arena of change, it could go either way, toward making life in America better, more inclusive, more generative, more promising for all of us, or it could go wrong. It could end up only enriching a few people at the very top, at the expense of the vast majority of us who are already struggling. The outcome on the other side of the moment could be very good for our country and humanity, or it could be very bad. And the difference, frankly, is up to you. You are part of the largest, most diverse generation in history. You, like the baby boomers before you, are a culture-driving generation. Not only will this moment have an outsized role in defining us, you will have an outsized role in shaping our politics, our country, our culture, our economy in every way. You will drive the movements that will reshape our democracy. You will be in charge of companies, government, organizations, and universities when we become a majority-minority nation. It's an incredible opportunity and also responsibility. We need you to help get us on a good path. You have the benefit of being from the beautiful Aloha State, with a strong native tradition, a culture of aloha, and the diversity that is your starting point. We will need you to lead and to act. I'm going to quote the great philosopher Yoda from Star Wars, who said, "Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering." We will need you to act like Lily from a place of love, with your strongest moral compass. Act more, love more. The stakes couldn't be higher. You can be sure that one day your children and your grandchildren will ask you, where were you during this moment in history? I want you to have a good answer. Just like your families are proud of you today, I want you to have an answer you can feel proud of. I want you to have an answer you can feel proud of. And in the meantime, I want you to celebrate and feel proud of all that you have accomplished to get to this moment today. I'm so proud of you, and all of us in this room are so very proud of you. Congratulations.